What does it really mean to support our troops? Is it the flag decal on our cars? The standing ovation that we give veterans at the ball game? Is it the amazing Veterans Day sales? Or is it something deeper, something harder to obtain? Because when the uniform comes off, the mission doesn't end there. For too many veterans, the years after service are marked by struggle to find employment, struggle to find housing, struggle to find decent health care, struggle just to find purpose, struggle to be seen. We say thank you for your service, but how often do we follow that up with action? Why are thousands of veterans homeless in the wealthiest nation on earth? Why are mental health clinics at the VA so understaffed? Why does a veteran wait months to be seen? Why is it so easy for politicians to promise everything to veterans during an election year and so hard for them to fund basic services when they get into office? And why is it that after all veterans have given, so many are still falling through the cracks? This episode is about what happens after the uniform. It's about the gap between what we say and what we do. It's about the promises we've made and the promises we've broken. This is Evergreen Perspective. I'm Ben Chrisley, a Navy veteran, a flight nurse, and someone who's had to navigate the VA system myself. I've sat in the same waiting rooms over and over, filling out the same forms, hoping this time something might actually be different, hoping that somebody might actually listen this time. I've worked inside that system too at the VA as a nurse care manager, helping thousands of fellow veterans access care they've earned through their service. And even with all that, I've struggled to navigate the system and to get the care that I need. This should tell you something, because if someone like me, someone who knows the system, knows the language, knows the process, is still running into brick walls, then what happens to veterans that don't have that type of support? This episode isn't about pointing fingers. It's about trying to do what we always do on Evergreen Perspective, and that's tell the truth. And the truth is, veterans aren't asking for handouts. We're asking for the promises to be kept. We're asking to be treated with the same seriousness and urgency we gave our country when we signed on the dotted line to serve. So today we're going to talk and walk through how we got here, how our country has treated its veterans over time, where it got it right, where it failed. We'll meet veterans living through the system right now. We'll talk to people out on the front lines, that are out there trying to help veterans, because this isn't just a policy problem, it's a moral one, and how we want to take care of our veterans, because freedom isn't free. So let's start by taking a look back, at how this all began. But before we do that, I'd like to bring in Kate for Kate's Civic Corner.
Thanks, Ben. Hey, folks. Kate here with the Civic Corner, taking a minute to highlight some opportunities to get involved here in Southwest Washington. If you don't live around here, get on the web and do a little searching. I'm sure you'll find options near you. We'll put a link in the show notes for each of the events we're highlighting here, where you can find more information, including what to expect and how to sign up. All right. Coming up on the 24th at 7 p.m., we have the 17th Legislative District Democrats General Meeting. This is a virtual meeting held via Zoom. On the 26th, we have 3 events. At 9 a.m., the 49th Legislative District Republicans will be holding their caucus meeting at the Clark County Republican headquarters in Vancouver. Also, the 26th is the Repair and Sustainability Fair in Centralia. All kinds of cool stuff happening at this event. The main focus is helping community members fix items they'd otherwise need to throw away. Broken appliances, clothes with tears or broken zippers, broken bikes, knives that need sharpening, that kind of thing. There are also free classes on composting and soil health. Check out the link for more details. Some pretty awesome stuff. Our volunteer opportunity for this week is the Adopt a Park event at Leroy Hagan Park in Vancouver. This is also on the 26th, starting at 10 a.m. These are just a few of the great ways to get involved. If there's an event in Southwest Washington that you'd like us to feature here on Evergreen Perspective, please put it in the comments or send us an email. This is Kate with Kate Civic Corner, encouraging you to get out there and get involved. Now back to Ben.
As always, to help understand where we are now, we have to look back at where we started. We have to look at our history. America's promise to its veterans goes all the way back to the very beginning. Literally the very beginning, Revolutionary War. Back then, the young Continental Congress didn't have money to pay its soldiers directly. So instead, they issued promissory notes, basically IOUs or war bonds called Continental Certificates, with a promise that they would be paid back with interest later. But when the war ended, Congress was broke and they were disorganized. Payments were delayed for years. And so many veterans, they were desperate for cash. So what'd they do? They ended up selling their certificates to the ultra wealthy for pennies on the dollars just so they could get by, right? Not the promised value, but pennies on the dollar. And here's where it gets a little bit ugly. When Congress finally did decide to honor the debt, it paid the full face value, all right, but only to the people that actually held their certificates at the time. So instead of compensating the soldiers who earned their certificates through blood and sacrifice, the profits went to the wealthy financiers who bought them on the cheap. This sparked one of the first major debates in U.S. politics. And the debate was, should the government repay the original veterans or the speculators? Alexander Hamilton, as Treasury Secretary at the time, argued for paying the current holders to preserve national credit, right? Well, the critics, like Thomas Jefferson and others, called it a betrayal of the common soldier. It's clear that this wasn't about money. It revealed a pattern that would repeat throughout American history. When the war ends and the country moves on from it, the burden too often falls on those who have served, and they are often left behind and struggling. If you want to dive really deep into that particular debate, I recently read the book. It's called The First Congress. It does a great job of really expanding on that big debate. But let's move to the Civil War. That's when the federal government started to expand veterans' benefits in a more formal, structured way, especially for Union soldiers, particularly, who were wounded or disabled. But even then, the system was deeply unequal. White Union veterans could apply for pensions. First just for injuries, but then later on for age and any other type of disability they might have suffered. So some of these pensions came for them, but, it was especially important for the aging soldiers, right? Because they didn't have the same type of social backstops we have now. But the Black Union soldiers, many of whom had risked everything to fight for a country that still denied them full citizenship, were often excluded from these benefits. Many lacked proper documentation of their service because their records weren't kept quite as meticulous as their white counterparts. Right? Others were outright denied due to just local discrimination and bureaucratic hurdles that were actually built into the system already. So, and then the Confederate veterans, they were entirely excluded from the federal support. The U.S. government refused to recognize their service, which meant no pensions, no land grants, no health care. But many southern states, Confederate veterans were supported by state-run programs. So, you had this strange telling split. The federal government took care of Union soldiers, unevenly so, right? Because it left out the black veterans almost entirely. And then meanwhile, the southern states built in these safety nets for their soldiers, specifically men who had taken up arms against the United States. So, it was a system based on race, geography, and the politics of the day. A sign that even in the early days, veteran care was never just about service. So if we fast forward to World War I, right, over 4 million American soldiers returned home from what had been called the war to end all wars. They came back to a country that was unprepared to absorb them. No job programs, no mental health support, no health care, no housing assistance.